All right, Scottie Kimmelman here with the National Sports Media Association, and today I'm joined with the 2023 Georgia Sportscaster of the Year and the voice of the Atlanta Braves, Brandon Gaudin. Brandon, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me, Scotty.
Right, yeah, thanks for hopping on. And before we get started about your time with the Braves this past season, I want to quickly ask about how did you get into sportscasting?
It was because of the Braves. I grew up in southern Indiana, and back in the 90s, it was when the Atlanta Braves were not only getting good, but they were also on TV every night because of
Mm.
TBS carrying every broadcast. And at the time, that was unorthodox. Now you can get every game, and back then you couldn't. So for me in southern Indiana, I could either get the Cubs on WGN or the Braves on TBS. And I fell in love with the Atlanta Braves through watching them on TBS. And I fell in love with their lead play by play announcer, Skip Carey. So as I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I started mimicking Skip Carey in my living room of my childhood home, playing make believe baseball games. And I told everybody in my family from that day forward, from when I was a little kid, that I wanted to be Skip Carey, that I wanted to be an announcer for the Braves someday. So to fast forward, gosh, 3 decades, and for that to come to fruition, sometimes it doesn't seem real.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Love it. And you've obviously had a very successful career, working with the Braves, leading up through football and baseball, just in the broadcasting industry, and have thrived with every opportunity you were given. But I want to ask you specifically with your time at Butler University, as well as your early experiences in broadcasting, how did that shape you to who you are today?
Yeah, every step of my journey, I would say, has taught me a little something different in a good way. When
Right.
I grew up in Evansville, trying to mimic Skip Carey, the Braves announcer, that was kind of one story. And then when I decided to go to college and went to Butler, that was a little bit more exposure, getting to Indianapolis and expanding my horizons a little bit. And then I look at the stops that I've had along the way. I did minor league baseball out in Utah. I went to New York City and lived there. I went to Indianapolis and worked at my alma mater, Butler. I was at the University of Evansville, where I grew up, and then came down to Atlanta. So all these stops, I would say there's been not only personal growth, but professional growth. And I've just been very fortunate, not only the opportunities that I've had, but that they've been presented at the right time in my life and in my career. And, when I was in my early 20s and with all my peers that were wanting to get into broadcasting, there seemed to be such a rush of, I want to get to this point really quickly. And what I learned somewhere in my mid to late 20s was, just as cliche as it is, to enjoy the job that you're in and the moment that you're in. And whatever happens, work hard, and whatever needs to happen will take care of itself. And that has made my career that much more enjoyable, and the people that I've gotten to meet along the way that much more enjoyable. And look, I don't know where the ride's going to take me next, but I know that I'm incredibly grateful and thankful for where it's taken me to this point.
Great, awesome. And how would you say, covering countless different sports in your career, I know you did a little bit of football, you're doing baseball now. How would you say doing those different aspects in your career, how would that improve your skills as a broadcaster?
Yeah, when I grew up, I really was focused on baseball. It was all about baseball, baseball, baseball. But growing up in Indiana, basketball was kind of king. And so I loved playing basketball growing up. And then I played football, even though I was a kicker. So some may not say I played, but football in high school. And so my love for the three main sports really developed.
Mm.
And as I started broadcasting baseball, I knew I always wanted to do baseball. But I said, you know what? I want to get into basketball and football. And surely enough, there was an opportunity that was presented to me at the University of Evansville, my hometown, after I graduated from college, to go back there and broadcast their baseball and basketball games. And so that first got my toe dipped into the basketball waters. And then shortly after that, an opportunity presented itself in football. And so now I've been doing all three for, gosh, 13 years, I believe. And Fox has presented me with a wonderful opportunity to continue to do the football and basketball thing in marriage with the Braves baseball opportunity that I've been presented. So I love getting to do all three. I say all the time, there are three different challenges, not only in what you do on air and how you present the game, but there are three very different challenges in how you prepare for
Mm.
each of those sports. And I'm a preparation nerd, just like a lot of people are that do what they do in this industry. So to be able to marry those three sports together and make a career out of each of them is really rewarding.
That's great. Love it. And knowing that you're the main voice of the Madden football video games, I'm a huge fan of it. I know countless other people are. How did an opportunity like that arise specifically? And what has that opportunity been like for you? It's such a popular game, such an amazing opportunity. So what was that like for you to do?
People only usually like Madden when they play it on mute, so they don't have to listen to Charles and I and our repetitive commentary. No, in all seriousness, it's been a thrill. It's been something that is totally different from play-by-play in an actual game.
Mhm.
This is more, I say, voice acting because you are reading a script. You're in a studio. You're coming up with make-believe scenarios. And I remember last year, it's 10 in the morning, and I'm sitting here in my house screaming touchdown calls in a Super Bowl. And you kind of have to amp yourself up for that because you're not at the stadium. You're not hearing the roar of 80,000. So it's a much different skill set than what I do when I'm broadcasting an actual game. But it came about in such a strange way. I was at Georgia Tech at the time doing their play by play on the radio. And one of the producers of the video game reached out to me and said that he had heard some of my calls and was interested in talking to me about possibly auditioning to be the next play-by-play announcer on the game because they were moving on from Jim Nantz and Phil Simms.
Mhm.
Now, at the time, I had not done any national work. I didn't expect a whole lot of it because I knew that they were going to be bringing in people to audition that had a much higher profile than me. But I went down to Orlando to the studio to audition, and I remember it went well. I just remember feeling, wow, that went about as well as it could have, and they received it well. And then lo and behold, 3 months later, and this is back in 2016 now, I believe, I got the call where they asked me if I wanted to step into that position and have been doing it for the last 7, 8 years alongside Charles Davis, which has been an incredible, rewarding experience because he's one of the best guys in the world. But yeah, it's been surreal. It's been a bunch of different emotions, but most of them positive, and it's been a ride that I wouldn't exchange for anything else.
That's amazing. Great story. Thank you. And lastly, I want to ask you about your time with the Braves. And first, how you're able to get that opportunity. And I know you grew up such a big Braves fan and all of that, but I want to ask how you got that opportunity and what has that time been like for you?
So, because I grew up such a big Braves fan, and because I had been living in Atlanta for the last 9 years before getting the Braves job,
Hmm.
I always told myself if there was a team job that I was going to do, I would want it to be the Atlanta Braves. And I just never thought that it would open because I mentioned that I grew up watching Skip Carey and idolizing him. Well, his son Chip had called Braves games for a long time.
Hmm.
And Chip is a phenomenal announcer, just like his dad and grandfather were. And I loved watching the Braves with Chip Carey calling them. And I just figured he would retire here. Well, he got an opportunity to go to a city that he has a lot of ties to from his childhood in St. Louis. And so this job popped open. And I thought, well, okay, this seems to be the right time. If I can work it out with what I'm doing at Fox to be able to do the Braves as well, I'm going to
Hmm.
pursue this. And there was mutual interest, and it all happened very quickly because Chip stepped away to go to St. Louis late in the off season last year, before the 2023 campaign. So everything was a whirlwind. It all happened within a couple weeks' time. But I just remember getting that call asking if I wanted to take on the position with the Atlanta Braves. And in so many ways, that's a call that I had kind of waited for since I was 7 and 8 years old,
Wow.
watching the Braves on TBS back in Evansville, Indiana. And so that's, you only get a few of those moments in your life where you will never forget everything about that moment, where you were, what it smelled like, what you were doing. And that's one of those moments that I will never, ever forget.
That's amazing. Love it. And last but not least, I want to ask you if there's any advice you would give to an aspiring broadcaster, such as myself and countless others in the industry, what would you tell them?
It's pretty simple. It is take each job and enjoy it for what it is, and don't rush to the next thing. There is such a desire, and I fell victim to this too in my early 20s, to get out of college and say, all right, I've got these goals and I need to accomplish them now or in 5 years. Goals are great. I'm not saying don't set goals. I'm not saying don't shoot for the stars. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, realize that if you don't get it on your timeline, or if that job that you really want doesn't come through, it's okay. That doesn't determine your worth. That doesn't determine your value as a broadcaster. The real enjoyment in this career is the people that you meet along the way. And if you enjoy the art and the preparation of each broadcast and bringing that broadcast to the viewers and the listeners, you're on the right track, regardless of whether you're calling single A baseball, Major League Baseball. No matter what you're doing, appreciate each job for what it is and let the rest take care of itself. And, I said it earlier, I know that's cliche, but that's something that I've really tried to embrace, that others try to settle on me early in my career. And now I try to pass that forward to others.
Awesome. Love to hear it. All right, that's all I have. Thanks so much again for joining. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Scotty.